A lot of people didn't say much and kept their mouth shut for years till they retired. I've had a lot of statements now. I have confirmation from the air traffic control people, and I'm going to read it a little later tonight. They saw the object go across their scope, 60-mile scope, in 2 or 3 seconds, thousands of miles an hour. It came back across their scope again, stopped near the water tower, which wasn't far from them. They observed it. They watched it go over and go into the forest where we were. Watersham radar, Eastern radar we called it, definitely picked something up, and it was, how should I say, it disappeared, so to speak, the recording and all. But one of the operators has confirmed that they did pick up a bogey, they called it, and it went into the forest, or they lost it near Rendlesham Forest. Our controller in the weapons storage area, we have a big tower there, saw the object, and so did a call man that was working there. 3 or 4 of the people on the ground in the weapons storage area went up and got a 12-power binoculars, and the objects in the sky, they say, were triangular. I could not see the shape because they were bright. They were just too bright to pick out a shape. Whatever was there was obviously under intelligent control. My personal feeling is there was some type of a mothership or bigger entity or something that was controlling what was on the ground and perhaps some of what we saw in the sky. I don't know. One of the people in the weapons storage area say he saw a much larger craft. None of them told me this at the time. I didn't find this out until years later when they all retired. The air traffic controllers were asked, well, why didn't you confirm? Because I kept calling the command post asking, look here, what do you see? And they kept saying they see nothing. And the air traffic controllers told me that they knew anytime an air traffic controller reported a UFO, they got decertified. And they became a cook or a baker or a copper or some other such thing. So they said, hey, zip, we don't talk about it. I have signed sworn statements from them that they did what they saw. I'm convinced that yes, NSA, DIA, M whatever, Ultra, all these different people were involved, but there is a civilian agency under contract that's removed from everybody and everything, that's pulling strings, and Obama doesn't know what's going on. Clinton did everything he could. I can tell you Clinton did everything, I personally knew his chief of staff.
And this agency, a civilian agency, is this what you're going to reveal this evening?
I don't know it. I only have a suspicion. It's beyond anything that anybody has. If you remember when Clinton got elected, you probably don't know. He said to Warren Hubble, who himself got in a lot of trouble, he said, Warren, I want to know 2 things. Who killed Kennedy and are UFOs real? And he admitted after he left office, I never got an answer to either one of them. I think probably Senior Bush was the last president that knew what was going on. Just a guess.
Senior Bush.
From the way things work.
But I can tell you something interesting, because my buddy Nick Pope did a lot of research on this, and documents are missing from the exact time frame that we had the issues of Pentwaters. Everything before and after that's still there. He did a lot of research. Most of you know who Nick Pope is. So, something funny. I'd love for everyone to come out. I have no idea what, other than my memo, I have no idea what they have. I don't think they ever responded. They got caught flat-footed and have egg on their face. That's the only thing I can say. They never expected it to come out either, I'm sure. I guess the best thing I can say is there's no doubt in my mind that we are not alone. That's all I can say. I don't know what I saw. I wish I knew. I'll probably never know, and you may never know either. So, yes, I think there are some people that know, but you won't get to them. Mr. Obama won't get to them. Other presidents have tried hard. Jimmy Carter supposedly had an experience. Bill Clinton tasked his chief of staff, told him when he came into office, there's 2 things I want to know. Told Warren Hubble. The gentleman got in a little trouble later, but he apparently did a good job at the beginning. He said, I want to know who killed Kennedy, and I want to know if UFOs are real. And when he left office, he said, I never got an answer to either one of them.
It's definitely coming this way. The pieces of it are showing off. There is no doubt about it. This is weird. To the left? Yeah, definitely. 2 lights. 1 light to the front, 1 light to the left. Keep the flashlights off. There's something very, very strange. Keep the headset on. See if it gets any stronger. Okay. Give us your layout.
Notation that this is on a beta reading, too.
It's on a beta reading?
But
Okay.
it still has been removed.
Okay. This is we're falling off it again.
It just moved to the right.
Yeah.
Off to the right.
Strange. Oh, wait a minute, left. Let's approach to the edge of the woods up there. Do you want to do it without lights? Let's do it carefully. Come on. Okay, we're looking at the thing. We're probably about 200 to 300 yards away. It looks like an eye winking at you. It's going moving from side to side. And when you put the star scope on it, it sort of has a hollow center, a dark like sirens. It's like the people were alive.
Well, welcome everybody. It's always a pleasure to come back to Suffolk. I have to tell you, I had 13 different assignments in my Air Force career over almost 30 years, and this was probably the most pleasurable, and I have very fond memories of Woodbridge, Bentwaters, and the whole surrounding area. It was really an enjoyable time, and I hated to leave. Actually, I was supposed to be here for 3 years, and I managed to scrape a 4th year with begging and pleading, and had to go, though. I know you're very interested in what happened in the forest in December, but let me give you a little background. I was born and raised outside the city of Pittsburgh, had a fairly, I guess, normal life, did the normal sports, etc., was a Boy Scout. Actually, I got to come to Sutton Park, England, to represent Boy Scouts of America at the 50th Jamboree at Jubilee, the 50th anniversary of Scouting. That was my first taste of England, and I enjoyed it very much, although I'm not a pork pie fan, I can tell you. I went through normal schooling, went to university, got a degree, got married, settled down. One thing, I never had any experience, never reading anything or hearing anything about UFOs the whole time I was growing up. I did have one, I guess, encounter, you might say, not with UFOs. My family was involved in a local parish church, and they had a rummage sale. I think you have different names for them, but the garage sale, rummage sale, yard sale, where all the ladies in church gathered. I'd bring clothing, unused clothing, appliances, books, you name it, and took it to the church and invited the public and made a little money for charity. Well, one of my jobs was to bring the boxes in from the cars and help sort things out. And one particular box had a big load of books in it, and I was an avid reader. So I thumbed through the books and I found a couple books of great interest, including one by Donald Kehoe. Maybe you all know who he is, about UFOs and pilots or something to that effect. So while the ladies were busy peddling the goods, I sat down and read the book, and I found it very interesting. However, I put it aside and got on with other things, got married, got faced with the military draft, which is conscription, decided to go into the Air Force, which I did, and forgot all about UFOs, and never had any other inkling to even think about them until 1980. So I don't belong to any UFO organizations. I don't subscribe to any magazines. I just have a little bit of interest, and I received a tremendous amount of correspondence and interest from people that are very serious, and have had the opportunity to work with some of the best researchers in the United States, people like Leslie Kean, Robert Hastings, John Alexander, Dick Hall, all of them. I've worked with them all, and very impressive, and I've learned a great deal, and I can really appreciate things. Let's get back to Bentwaters. In 1980, and many of you know some of this, but I'm going to go over it anyhow, Bentwaters, the 81st Attack Fighter Wing, was the largest tactical fighter wing in the free world, composed of the 2 bases. You're familiar with Bentwaters and Woodbridge, 4 FOLs, forward operating locations in Germany, where we kept 6 aircraft and crews and necessary equipment, and 2 standby locations in Germany. The concept of operation was, if the Eastern Bloc countries came through the Fulda Gap into Germany, they'd have to bring their armor, their tanks, their heavy equipment, and all the support stuff through the Fulda Gap. Our mission was to move forward and go kill tanks and shoot up trucks. The base would then have been backfilled with F-4s and I think F-16s in the later days, and they would pick up pre-positioned stuff and take the war, so to speak, to the enemy heartland. Those were pretty tense times, if you remember, 1980. We exercised all the time. And you haven't lived till you put on rubber boots, rubber gloves, a gas mask, a rubber suit or a chemical suit, which had charcoal impregnation in it, and try and operate and wear a flak vest that weighed about 40 pounds. I must have spent 1,000 hours in the command post under those circumstances. And that's the only part of the assignment to Bentwaters that I didn't particularly like, but that was something that came with the job. I arrived here in early spring, late spring I guess it was, 1980, as a deputy base commander. And my primary job as a deputy base commander was to make things run smoothly on the base, to support the base and wing commander and make sure everything was functioning properly, and try and, I should say, put out the fires before they got burning. In that capacity, I spent a lot of time on the base. I went to the dining hall late at night. I spent time in the fire department. I hung around personnel, and especially rode around at night with the police, because that's when everything seemed to happen. And those guys always knew what was going on, even if it was just gossip. You learned an awful lot. That was part of my job. The base commander was busy greeting people, signing documents, many of which I prepared, cutting ribbons, kissing babies, doing a lot of political things. And I stayed in the background pretty much, just made things move smoothly. Well, the first part of the year went very well. No big issues. Things fell into place. We got a new base commander, came in, Ted Conrad. We decided to have a year-end party, family type affair, to more or less recognize people for all the accomplishments during the year, and then give a few speeches, pats on the back. We were going to have a Christmas party, but we didn't get our bid in fast enough for the 2 facilities on the base, so we had to do it on the 28th, I believe it was, of December, after Christmas. We still called it the Christmas party. It was a covered dish dinner. You know, the wives or spouses brought a dish, and we provided meat and whatever. And it was a good time. We just finished the main course when Lieutenant England, Bruce England. Lieutenant Bruce England was the on-duty flight commander for the security police. And Bruce was not a young lieutenant in a typical sense. Bruce had been 4 years in the Marine Corps, had gone to college, gotten a degree, came in the Air Force, so he was a very, how should I say, mature lieutenant. Probably more mature than some of our captains were. But anyhow, he's a good guy. Bruce came in to the officers' club and said, "It's back." "What's back?" Said, "The UFO's back." Now let me back up 2 nights so we get the sequence right. On the night of December 25th, the morning of December 26th, Boxing morning, I guess you'd call it. Wasn't it Boxing Day, the 26th? I stopped by the police office, the desk sergeant, to find out, what's going on, about 6 o'clock in the morning, and pick up the police blotters. The police blotters are the chronological listing of everything that happened the previous night, or previous 24 hours, rather. And I walked in, and the desk sergeant was Crash McKay. That was his nickname. He was a staff sergeant, a buck sergeant. And he started laughing. And he had a good sense of humor, so I said, "What's so funny?" He said, "Colonel, you're not going to believe this. Last night, Burroughs and Peniston and Cavanagh were out in the woods chasing UFOs all night, and the lieutenant said, 'Don't put anything in the police blotter.'" I kind of laughed. I thought it was a joke at first. And I said, "Well, what do you know?" He said, "Well, somewhere," and I think he said around 12 or 1 o'clock, somewhere in that neighborhood, he said, John Burroughs, who was Police 4, Police 5 were at Woodbridge Base, went up to secure the back gate, the east gate. Now, we normally man the east gate during the day. It was a shortcut between the 2 bases. Otherwise, you have to all go down the roundabout through Ike and around and back up. We locked the gate at night because we just didn't have the manning to maintain it. So the maintenance people would continuously get the combination of the gate, because at night when they were working, they'd want to run back and forth and not go all the way around. So it was on their checklist every hour or 2 hours to check the lock on the gate. So Burroughs goes up to the gate, it's locked. But he looks out and he sees something in the forest. Now in those days, if you went to the east gate and looked out, all that area of trees there now, there was no, low field, not mowed, but there was no growth over about that high, and you could see all the way to the Forest Service Road, and you could see halfway through the forest toward the Capitol Green. He saw something, red, green, blue lights, and flashing red. Well, the first thing came to his mind, a crashed airplane. So he walked back to the guard shack, which, by the way, is not what's there now. There's a new one there. There's an old wooden building with a telephone, and called the desk sergeant and said, "I think I've seen a crashed airplane." Of course, the desk sergeant panicked, and he immediately called the control tower. He called the command post. Everybody's saying there's nothing reported, nothing flying. They called RAF Watersham, which is Eastern Radar, we call it. They had air defense for that sector, nothing. They even called Heathrow Tower. There's nothing flying in your area. There's nothing reported done. So there's great concern amongst the cops. So Master Sergeant Chandler, who is the senior NCO on duty, comes up to the gate. Jim Peniston comes up to the gate, who is the flight line supervisor, and several others. And they're all standing there looking, and they all see the lights. So what do? According to them, what they did is, first of all, they selected one of the officers, Bud Stephens, who said, "Not me, I ain't going out there." Kind of funny. But so Peniston stepped forward and said, "I'll go." And John Burroughs said, "I'll go." And poor Airman Cavanagh, who was the lowest ranking guy there, said, "And you'll go." So they checked their weapons with Sergeant Chandler. They jumped in a 6-pack truck. They drove onto Eastgate Road. They turned right. They went up the road about 150 yards. They turned left. There used to be a big plaque there. There's a Forest Service gate there now. And the road leading down into the forest was very rough, irregular, and if you didn't have a high-center truck or four-wheel drive, you wouldn't have gone down there and gotten back. Anyhow, they drove down there. They went down probably 400 or 500 yards to the last trail, or whatever you call it, to the left that goes parallel to the Forest Service road. They went up in there and they parked the vehicle and they saw something in the woods. Now this is all what they told me. I was not there. They were having problems with the radios, and that's unusual because that's flat out there. The radios are line of sight and they normally work well. There are some dead spots and we know where they are, not out there. So they leave Cabanasac a little bit behind them as a radio relay so they could call him and he could call back to the gate. They go forward, and exactly what happened after that, I'm not really sure. When I called them in and interviewed them, I called everybody that was involved in one by one and had to make a statement and draw what they saw. And Burroughs and Peniston drew triangular-shaped craft with multicolored lights, 9 feet on the side approximately, smooth, with the equivalent of hieroglyphics is the best way I can describe it, strange markings. Peniston claims he touched it. Cabanasac says he thought he saw Burroughs when it went up in the air, get beamed up into it. Something happened to them out there, something very remarkable. They came back to the base, and of course they got debriefed, and nobody wanted to touch it, of course. This is, we don't want to get involved in this. I picked up the blotters, and of course I had them put something to effect in. They saw lights and didn't know what it was, and they weren't really sure. I do know one thing, there was about 40 minutes that we couldn't account for where they were. They were off the air for about 40 minutes. We do know that for sure. Master Sergeant Chandler and the rest of them still up at the gate were in a panic. They were getting ready to send another team out to find out what happened to them. And I'm going to tell you more about what happened. I found out many years later in a few minutes. Didn't think too much of it. I thought there has to be an explanation. And the senior officers kind of had we don't know, and chuckle or whatever. Nobody knew what to do, so we just kind of put it aside. The next night, and I didn't find this out until 6 or 8 years later, and I was long gone, the on-duty flight lieutenant that night was Bonnie Tamplin. Bonnie Tamplin was a female, and the 1980 female cops supervising male cops didn't go over very well. It does today, there's no issues now, but back then there were problems, and the fact that she was black didn't help her either. I liked her, she was phenomenal. I thought she was a great guy, a great kid. Anyhow, she apparently saw something, and she and Master Sergeant Ball went out, and something happened to them. I don't know what happened. I was told she threw her gun down and ran. I've never been able to verify that. She left the base a day or two later and supposedly had a nervous breakdown. I never related the two or was told, there was any connection. I was never told she was out there. She's in Italy now and doesn't want to talk about it. So I have no idea what happened. That was the second night. So let's go back to the party, the third night. When Bruce comes in and we talk, Ed Conrad, who is the base commander, says, well, I've got to make the awards and presentations to give a speech, and besides, I don't think I want to go. You go home and change clothes, and you go out and investigate. And I said, I'll go put this thing to rest. I'm sure there's an answer. So I went to Mel Ziegler, who was the squadron commander for the security police, and I said, I want one of your good NCOs to go with Bruce and I. And he said, well, guess again, Bobby Ball just happened to be on duty. He said, great. I knew Sergeant Ball. He was very responsible. I went to Sue Jones, who was the disaster preparedness officer. I said, who's on standby? Disaster preparedness has the equipment to deal with radiation, biological, etc. And then she said, Monroe Nevels. Well, I knew Sergeant Monroe Nevels from exercises. And I knew he had a degree in photography, even though he was in disaster preparedness. And he did a lot of freelance work for the base newspaper and did good work. And he had a Nikon F2 and an F1, which I had too, so I knew he knew what he was doing. So I said, well, call him and have him meet me at his office in 30 minutes. We're going to go out. I want him to bring an APN-27, which is a Geiger counter, and his camera. We're going to put this to rest. And, confirm there's no radiation, there's no anything, we'll take some pictures of whatever we see. I've got a little pocket recorder, which I carried everywhere I went anyhow. We had a dictaphone system in the office, and I didn't like to take notes, so I always carried a pocket recorder. I went home and changed clothes, Bruce England and Bobby Ball and Sergeant Vistenza, Adrian Vistenza, a young cop, staff sergeant I believe at the time, came by and picked me up at the house. I put my old fatigues on and a field jacket. It was 35 degrees that night and the wind was blowing. We went down to the disaster preparedness office, picked up Sergeant Neville. He calibrated a couple of the APN 27s and he said to me, I remember, which one should I take? I said, how's the calibration? He said, they all calibrate fine. I said, take your pick. So we picked up one APN 27. We all piled into the Jeep. It was a little crowded. We went down to the motor pool because he wasn't sure he had a full tank of gas, which is on Bentwaters. It's right inside the gate. We're right inside the gate now on the industrial side. Put a little gas in the Jeep. And there is another vehicle in there pulling a light off. Light off is a motor generator, big yellow thing. We use them on the flat line with two fluorescent lights. We use them for security. We use them to illuminate work areas. And they told me there's already a couple out in the woods. They won't work right. What? Well, anyhow, they were fueling that. We went on across the base, out the back gate, actually went the same route that Peniston and Burroughs went the first night. Out the gate, turn right, turn left, down into the forest, turn left. I get out there, and there's probably 15, 16 cops, 2 or 3 vehicles, 2 light alls, and they're all milling around. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is a public relations disaster. If we get caught out in the woods in uniform with all this equipment in Queens Forest in the middle of the night, we'll make the headlines in the paper, and we'll never live this time. So I said, all right, everybody, knock it off, quiet, stay right here, no noisy radio communications, nothing. Now somebody mentioned, Brenda I think mentioned other, but somebody seeing lights in the sky. That was probably the light alls, although I don't know. I arrived there, and Bruce England says, the landing site's out there, where supposedly an object landed on the first night, the morning of the 26th. Okay, I said, let's go out there. Well, he brought a starlight scope along, a first generation night vision scope. So we look into the woods first, and I think I see a glow in a certain area. I'm not really positive, but anyhow, I said, what's in there? We've marked the site. So he took me into the site. And lo and behold, there's 3 indentations, about that big, 9 feet apart, where Peniston and Burroughs said this craft had landed. Clifford, you want to put the others, flip up a slider? That's the wing headquarters. Sorry. Go ahead, and one more. The object, solve that. Just a second. I got it. The aerial was right back here where the object landed. Here is the farmer's house. Here is the lighthouse over here. You can't see it very well in this picture. The lighthouse is there. In 1980, there was no hedgerow here. You could see all the windows in the farmhouse. Very clear. Anyhow, we're milling around here, looking at the site.
Microphone, please.
Microphone. Oh, I'm sorry. Microphone. I'm accustomed to have one stationary. We're milling around and looking at the site, taking radiation readings, and we find that the radiation is about 8 to 10 times higher than normal background in the indentations and slightly higher in the center formed by the triangle of the 3 indentations. You want to go forward a slide or 2? Now, there's the lighthouse on Orford Nest. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. Another slide. That's Orford Nest. Go ahead, keep going. The tower, woodbridge, air traffic control tower. Go ahead. Woodbridge, air traffic control tower. This is the east gate. Looking out, the gate's right up here. That's all new. That's all new. There used to be just a wooden shack right up there. Next slide. That's the new gate. That's been changed. It was just a simple gate before. Next slide. This is looking down the road now. This was all open field, all the way out into halfway to the coast, or to the Capel Grand fields. Next one. Another shot out the gate looking back. Go ahead. This is, if you go out the gate, turn right, and then turn left, this is the road going down into the area where we were, where we found the object or whatever it was. Next one. That's a sign there, just a forest sign. Now, that sign used to be right where that pipe gate was you saw 2 slides back. They've moved it somewhere else now. Next one. This is the area right here where we parked in the forest and went into the forest in there. The farmer's field's out here somewhere. This was taken 2 or 3 years ago. Go ahead. This is approximately what it looked like on the forest floor that night. It's not exactly the same spot, but it's nearby where it looks similar. Go ahead. This is the plaster cast. Jim Peniston went back the next morning because he knew nobody would believe him. He lived in Ipswich, and his landlord, I understand, was a plasterer. So he got plaster of Paris and went back and made some molds, 3 of them. 2 of them have disappeared. He gave me one for good keeping. The one that he knows disappeared, he put it in his household goods. The household goods, are shipped back to the States. It was in a small cardboard box, which was labeled, inventoried, taped up, put inside a larger cardboard box, put inside a wooden shipping crate, which is huge, sealed and caulked, nailed, sent to Indiana. When he opened the box, the cardboard box was there, the small box inside was gone. Mm-hmm. Oh no. Okay, just leave that up for a while. Well, we were told, go back to the lighthouse. Let's talk about that a little bit. 2 slides back, I think. Well, you're going out, I'll go on. Some critics have said we saw the lighthouse. We saw the lighthouse. We saw the lighthouse. The lighthouse is about 30 or 40 degrees off to the side. The lighthouse is interesting. I spent some time with Pete Simmons and Marcella, his wife. He's the lighthouse keeper. And asked him about it, what he thought and his ideas. He said, let me tell you something. The lighthouse is shuttered. If you're out on the sea, you can see a green and a red light depending upon where you are. If you're on the land, all you can see is a white light. We saw the white light. The object we saw, and I'm going to talk about in a few minutes, was glowing red. Red, not white. And the whole time I could see the lighthouse, just barely, you could see it over the trees. You want to go back another slide or 2? Yeah, that's good. We stood here. Here's where I saw the object I'm going to talk about. The farmhouse windows on the lower and upper level were bright. The farmhouse was dark. There were no lights in the farmhouse. I was concerned for the safety of the people in the farmhouse because I didn't know what was happening out in the field. All I could see was flicker like flames on their windows. Again, the lighthouse over here. You can barely see it. Anyhow, we're milling around. We're taking radiation readings. We're measuring the distance between the triangles, the indentations. I had Sergeant Neville's with the ATM-27 go to the nearest trees. The side toward the 3 indentations had slightly higher readings than the slide on the other side. There were marks on the trees. I don't know what they were. Rub marks? I don't know. They may have been blaze marks. But if you looked over, there was a heavy tree canopy. These are mature Corsica pines, a strong canopy. But if you looked up at that site, you could see, and there were broken branches on the ground, sort of indicating that something may have come up or down. I don't know. But while we're milling around there, Bruce England, Lieutenant England says, look over there. There's a red light. It's moving. So we look at it and we watch it. It's out in the field. It's out in the middle of that field between us and the farmhouse. I said, let's try and get a closer look. Well, as we started to go forward, it came toward us. It came into the forest. It moved through the trees, up and down, bobbing up and down, like this through the trees. As we got close to it, it backed up. It receded back out into the farmer's field. We looked close at it, and it looked like an eye. It was oval, about, I'm guessing now because it was 100 yards, 50 yards, whatever away. About that big. It had a very dark center and a very pronounced red around it. It appeared to be shedding like molten metal. I can remember I worked one summer in a steel mill and I watched in the crucible when they poured and the stuff splashed. That's just what it looked like. And I thought it was either sparks or something that was burning falling off it. We watched for a minute or so and the object silently explodes, silently, into 5 white objects, just like fireworks, and it disappears. Well, I can't explain this, and I'm thinking, well, I wish I'd never come out here. Nobody's going to believe this nonsense. I thought first ball lightning, but that wasn't ball lightning. Ball lightning doesn't do that. So I said, let's go out in the field and see if we can find any residue from where this object was shedding, whatever it was shedding. So we climb down over the berm, there's a big berm there, over the barbed wire fence, and out into the field. We look everywhere, and the only thing we found was evidence that the cattle had been there because somebody stepped in it. But there were no cattle in the field, but they had obviously been there. So we're not too far from the tree line, so let's go further out so we can get a better look at things. So we went down past the farmer's house, right along the right-hand side of the farmer's house. There's a road out front. We crossed the road, and there's a small stream. We stepped in the stream, and everybody got wet up to their knees at least, which we weren't very happy about. And just across the way was another field that had just been plowed. So we went out there, and we're looking back, trying to see if we could see anything, and we noticed objects to the north in the sky. They're elliptical, with multicolored lights on them. My guess is 3,000 to 4,000 feet up. So I was continually talking to the command post, what was going on. And so I said, can you have radar look here? And I give a description. And they come back and say nothing. Can't find anything. The objects turn to full circles. They're still illuminated with multicolored lights, and they're moving in synchronous together and making sharp turns, 90-degree turns. The only thing I could think of was a grid search or something. I don't know. I've never seen anything like it. Then I think Neville said, look to the south. There's two bright white lights out there. So we looked down to the south, and sure enough, there's two bright lights, almost like landing lights. Thinking, wow. One of those approaches overhead, directly overhead at very high speed, stops, and sends down a beam, like a laser beam. It was about 10 or 12 inches in diameter, and it was right over there. And I about went into shock, and I'm thinking, wow, is this a weapon? Communication? A warning? What do we do? And then suddenly, as it appeared, click, it disappeared, and the object went back to the south. At the same time, the other object moved over Bentwater's base and was sending out similar beams. Now, we had 3 different radios with us. We had the law enforcement radio somebody had. I don't remember which one had which one. We had the security radio, and I had the commandant radio. In other words, I could talk to command post, they could talk to Central Security Control, and they could also talk to law enforcement. I could hear chatter on the security net that the guys in the WSA were seeing things, and there was something going on over there. That's all I know. I don't know the details. I wasn't there, but I will read you some things later on that are very interesting. So I went over Bentwater, stopped sending down beams after a while, but it stayed in the sky, and we watched it probably another hour, and it was getting close to 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. Nobody seemed to be interested. Nobody seemed to want to respond. Nobody seemed to care. So I said to the guys, I'm cold, wet, hungry, and tired. Let's pack it in and go home. So we did. We went back to the base. I went home and took a shower. I couldn't sleep. I was still like this. So I decided to get down to the office. And I went down to the office, and we shared the building with the wing commander. He was on the left-hand side looking at the building, we were on the right. And as I went in, the wing commander came in. That would be old Gordon Williams. And he smiled at me and said, you must have had some light last night, because he watched the radio all the time. I don't think he slept with the radio. He said, what happened? I told him a little bit, and I said, I got a tape recording. He said, play it. So he and I stood there and he played it for him. He said, let me have it. I said, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. He said, I'm going to take it to the staff meeting on Wednesday and play it for General Basie. I said, there goes my career. So all week, I think it was Sunday or Monday, I can't remember which day it was, I sweat all week. I knew when he went to staff meeting, when he came back, I was waiting for him. And he came in and I said, well, boss, he threw me the tape recorder and laughed. And I said, well, boss, do I have a job? He just laughed. I said, well, what happened? He said, well, I played the tape for General Basie and the staff. He said, they all sat there quietly. And General Basie said, well, is Halt credible? He said, yes, I believe what's on the tape is right. Basie looks around, nobody says anything. So in his infinite wisdom, he says, well, it happened off the base. It's a British affair. Case closed. So I said, well, what will I do? He said, get with Don Moreland. Well, Don Moreland was the liaison officer. Don Moreland was in Wales for the holiday. He lives in Anglesey Island. I knew Don real well. We were good friends. Great guy. So I had to wait till, I don't know, about the 9th or 10th or whenever when he came back. He had a civilian deputy. I went to him, but he just said, not me, I ain't touching this. So when Don came back, I told him, and of course he says, oh, hey, we didn't need to listen to what to do. He said, so I'll call some people. So he called his supervisor, who was I think a commander over at Lincoln, or Milton Hall rather, 3rd Air Force, and they talked about it, and one of them called MOD somewhere, I don't know where, and he said, well, write a memo. He said, okay. So I wrote the infamous memo, which I can show you on the screen in a few minutes. And the idea was I would give it to him, and he would very discreetly send it to MOD. I'd never hear any more about it, but if they wanted to investigate, they would send somebody up to investigate. So days went by and nothing, weeks went by and nothing, a month went by or two, and he made many phone calls and talked to many people, and nothing seemed to happen. And I was relieved, man, I'm off the hook. This is done, it's gone away. All was quiet. 2 years go by. So, very interesting. I got approached by News of the World. Oh boy, Keith Beebe. Anybody know Keith Beebe? He's one of their editors. He offered me 20,000 pounds. And I said, oh boy, this would be nice, but I said, well, maybe I could donate it to the Air Force Aid Society. So I went and talked to Ernie Persky, the JAG. He says, no way. So I told Keith, sorry about that. Well, he said, okay. He came back later, and the gate called me, the gate guard, and said, Keith Beebe's out here and wants to see you. He wants your bio now. And I said, I said, I'll talk to him, but he can't have my bio. I got thinking, I'll bet he's going to come in. My bio was in Public Affairs, which was right across the street from us. So I ran over to Public Affairs and pulled my bio, the whole file, everything, pulled it out. And of course, they weren't happy to take it, but I didn't ask. I just went and opened the door and took it. They come in, we talked briefly. I told them a little bit about it. And he said, okay, and he went over to Public Affairs. Well, what he did is he pulled Gordon Williams' file, the wing commander, took his picture. You want to flip back a few slides and show them the News of the World. You may have seen it. There. Poor Gordon Williams. He's an innocent victim. Suddenly he starts getting all these phone calls. And I had to convince him I had nothing to do with it. I mean, he believed me, but I told him what happened, and he just kind of chuckled. Well, he's taken heat over it for years, too. There's two different ones. There's another one, I think. Much related to the issue. I made a tape recorder, and I took it back to the office, and I played it for my boss, obviously, and Gordon Williams played it for General Gabriel. And my boss at that time, Ted Conrad, said, make me a copy. So I took my tape recorder, and he had an identical one, went in the conference room, laid him on the table, and made him a copy. I gave it to him, and he put it in the desk drawer, and we all forgot about it. Well, he left. We won't talk about service. But anyhow, he left for promotion, I guess the best way to put it. And Sam Morgan came in. Sam Morgan and I had some issues. His children had got in trouble with the police, and the police asked me what to do, and I said, you do what you would normally do, and they did. And of course, the cop told Sam Morgan that I was the instigator behind it, until sent him over to his house, and he was just incensed that a cop with a uniform and a gun and a badge would come to his house and talk to his child. Well, that all kind of got swept under the table, but he was furious. So when he left, they needed a replacement, and Gordon Williams decided to put Sam Morgan in as the base commander. He'd been down in maintenance. Sam Morgan was running around telling people the first thing he did when he got in the base commander's chair was to fire me. Well, it got to me. So I went looking for a job. I had several good friends in Germany who are now retired generals, and I called one Bill Barrett, and I said, hey Bill, we'd gone to OTS together and gone to maintenance school together and stationed together. I'm looking for a job. He says, well, we have an opening at Ramstein. We need someone. We'd love to have you. So he went to the general at Ramstein, who called then General Pascoe, who was our wing commander, and said, will you release halt? And Pascoe said, hell no. That's exactly what he said. And then he called me on the carpet and said, what are you doing? Looking for a job. And I said, well, Sam Morgan said he's going to fire me. He said, he'll do no such thing. Don't you worry about it. And he didn't. But Sam had a chip on his shoulder. He played the tape and asked me what it was. I told him. And he thought, He started playing it at cocktail parties, and he gave it to a British solicitor by the name of Harry Harris. Harry Harris sold it to a Japanese producing company for 20,000 pounds or some such ridiculous figure, and it found its way back to the States. That's how the tape got out. That's an abbreviated version. The memo, Larry Fawcett, as I mentioned earlier, the original guy that was working with Larry Warren, that wrote Clear Intent, was looking for, he heard there was some memos and some correspondence. So he came to the base, and Jack Cochran was then the base commander, and asked for copies of everything. Of course, we didn't have anything in the file. The only copy was a carbon manifold. In those days, we had select typewriters. We didn't have word processors. And I had it. It was a personal thing. And so Cochran went back and said, we don't have anything. So they went to 3rd Air Force, and General Gabriel had left. And Pete Bent, who was also a good friend of mine, we'd gone through basic commander school together, was the acting 3rd Air Force commander until the new general came in. So he got the request, and he asked the staff, and apparently the RAF liaison officer said, oh, I've got something in the file. So they pulled the file copy out, and Pete saw my name on it, so he called me up, and he said, I've got this memo. And I said, how did you get the memo? He said, well, I got it from the RAF. I said, oh my God. I said, burn it. He said, what? I said, burn it. He said, why? I said, my life and yours will never be the same if you release that memo. He released the memo to Larry Fawcett. Larry Fawcett shared it with people in the States. 1 or 2 of them are in this room tonight, or were. And next thing you know, I'm at BBC 1, BBC 2, ITV, German TV, Radio Orwell, East Anglian Times, or whatever it is, some people from Japan, some people from Germany, and the place went crazy. I had to go into hiding almost. I said, oh my God, that's the last thing in the world I need. I said, this is not career enhancing. I was up for promotion at that time. Anyhow, that's how the documents got out. A couple things I failed to mention, I just happened to think of. I have statements here too. The air traffic controllers at Bentwaters have come forward. Robert Hastings, who wrote the book UFOs and Nukes, managed to get them to talk, and I have signed sworn statements from them. They watched, the night I was in the forest, they watched the UFO go across their 60-mile scope on the Bright 2, we called it, in 2 seconds, across a 60-mile scope. You figure out the speed. It came back across the scope in about 2 seconds. It buzzed the tire, the air traffic control tire, and sat near the water tower, this big rectangular water tower, not too far from the air traffic control tower, and then went into the forest where we were. The on-duty cop in the tire in the weapons storage area, we had a 40-foot tire out there with the controlled sensors on the fences and things, saw it too, saw it go into the forest. There was a communications man out there working, and he went ballistic. He saw it. I have his statement. The people on the ground in the weapons storage area saw it. 2 of them managed to get a pair of 12-pound binoculars, and they claimed that the white objects we saw were triangular. I have their statements. In other words, 2 air traffic controllers saw it in the tower. Waterson picked it up. The tower in the WSA saw it. People on the ground in the WSA saw it. We saw it. So all these different locations saw it. So it's pretty well established that something did happen.
Another question here, which is called speculation. It's been announced there are further MOD files being processed and released at the moment. Despite assurances that all the MOD files on the matter had previously been placed in the public domain, do you have any views on the possible content of these files and their potential value?
None whatsoever, but I can tell you something interesting, because my buddy Nick Pope did a lot of research on this, and documents are missing from the exact time frame that we had the issues at Bentwaters. Everything before and after that's still there. He did a lot of research. Most of you know who Nick Pope is. So, something funny. I'd love for everything to come out. I have no idea what, other than my memo, I have no idea what they have. I don't think they ever responded. They got caught flat-footed and have egg on their face. That's the only thing I can say. They never expected it to come out either, I'm sure. Well, their people did it, so. You know the diameter of the Earth, rather the circumference of the Earth, is just about 26,000 miles. The Earth rotates every 24 hours, doesn't it? Which means if you're on the equator, you're traveling over 1,000 miles an hour. Now here in England, you're probably only doing 800 miles an hour. Do you have any effect? No, because the atmosphere and everything is moving with you. There may be some way that these, whatever they are, have found a way to integrate themselves with their craft. Because I've pulled 7 Gs, and let me tell you something, even with a G suit on, your vision goes down to next to nothing, and if you're lucky, you stay, you know, you can understand what's going on, you don't pass out, it's just something else. There's certainly a possibility of that. Something else that struck me after reading the book and talking to some very knowledgeable people. Everybody in the world, different places, talks about Yeti, Bigfoot, the abominable snowman. Has anybody ever found one physically, or bones, or any positive evidence other than footprints? There have been a lot of cases where UFOs have been in the area. Now, I'm not saying Bigfoot or reptilian animals or funny dogs or elves or whatever come from UFOs, but there's some strange connection in some way with some of that. Who knows? One other thing I was going to tell you. Actually, I got part of that from Carl Fenty. If you ever want to read a good book, it's UFOs in Water. That's a subject that's never been touched by anybody prior to Carl getting involved. But I guess the best thing I can say is there's no doubt in my mind that we are not alone. That's all I can say. I don't know what I saw. I wish I knew. I'll probably never know, and you may never know either. So, yes, I think there are some people that know, but you won't get to them. Mr. Obama won't get to them. Other presidents have tried hard. Jimmy Carter supposedly had an experience. Bill Clinton tasked his chief of staff, told him when he came into office, there's two things I want to know. Told Warren Hubble. The gentleman got in a little trouble later, but he apparently did a good job at the beginning. He said, I want to know who killed Kennedy, and I want to know if UFOs are real. And when he left office, he said, I never got an answer to either one of them. So I leave you with that.